Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Permission to board. Permission to come aboard. Permission to board. Permission to bring me aboard. Permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Permission Granted podcast. Here's DA.
Well, here isn't DA. It's actually Mraz hosting the Permission Granted podcast. A little different, isn't it? DA is vacationing this week, as those who have listened to the show know. He decided to take a little reprieve from the cold weather. Good for him. Must be nice. But the vacation won't stop DA from coming on my podcast. That's right, my podcast here this week. Joining us from Florida, the vacationing DA. DA, nice for you to join me on my podcast.
It's nice for me to be on your podcast. I feel very rewarded that you booked me here.
It was very tough. Your PR person was very hard to get through, but ultimately
I drive a hard bargain.
You do. It's unfortunate we couldn't get a landline connection with you. I guess we're going to have to deal with the cell.
You know, disappointed with that. I've talked about this on the air. I'm a huge landline guy. I have a landline at my house. No matter what, I've always had a landline at all my apartments, even though you don't need one anymore, because I really like the comfort of talking on a landline, and I have one here at the hotel. Apparently my desk is not forwarding my calls up here, so that helps prevent the paparazzi from getting through to me while I'm trying to sleep, but it does not help for this podcast.
Right. Now, speaking of sleep, before we really dive into nuts and bolts, you have been pressing me here the last 2 days about, as we planned on doing this podcast, your sleep situation. You go from working overnights, the schedule I'm on now, you're basically getting up at the crack of dawn, going out, I see you're fishing, and you're in bed at, 9 o'clock at night? What are you doing down there? You're really just adapting to that mentality in Florida?
Yeah, Mraz, I think the old man has come over me here. I think I'm now officially of retirement age. I love this. I love this lifestyle down here. And maybe it's just my body totally overreacting to actually now not having to do overnights this week.
Right.
But I've been in bed early, going to bed at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 8:30. I was in bed one night.
I mean, basically eating dinner at 2 in the afternoon.
I don't know what's going on, but I'm waking up at the crack of dawn, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. I'm up and out the door, having my breakfast in the lobby, going out and, did a little fishing, and then went to the beach and did this and that, went for an early morning jog. I am now officially 70 years old and retired down here in South Florida, and I've got to tell you, couldn't be happier to be exactly that.
So I guess this would mean you're excited for the new hours in which you could probably wake up at 7 in the morning now if you go home and go right to bed after the show.
Yeah, well, look, Mraz, the overnights have been wonderful for a lot of different reasons. I think there's a community there that the people that work overnights want to know that you're up with them because nobody else is. So we're all working this kind of really bizarre alternate lifestyle where you're sleeping when other people are awake and you're awake when other people are sleeping. And it's tough on the body, and I give so much respect to the people that have done this for a career and for their lives. We did it for 2 years, but
I would say I'm fat because of it.
Yeah.
Very unhealthy on the body.
Yeah, why don't we blame that on the Chubbo Nation? But I will say on January 2, I think I might just change into a 65-year-old where I'm eating my dinner at 3:30 and really happy to do so.
Well, you did say on the air, on the DA show, that you had sprouted a gray hair about a month ago, so maybe that was your prequel to all this.
Yeah, I have. There have been times where I felt my mortality. I have a few specks of gray hair in my beard when it grows out, like under my chin, but I don't really grow out my beard like 5 o'clock shadow. So for the first time, I saw gray hairs around the temple. There was multiple, like 2 or 3.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and so I said, boy, I don't want to look like Berman, because Berman looks old. Berman
does look old.
I'm 35. Berman is like 37 maybe, and he looks old. I mean, he looks like he should be retired down here.
He's an old 37. I would say he's like the Amari Stoudemire of CBS Sports Radio. where if you looked at his bio and you went, wait, he's that young?
Yeah, I agree, because he acts much older, and also he's taken on a real old man approach by admitting that he farts in front of people. all the time, and he's done it on the air. He's done it in control rooms. He talks about it on the air. He's very public about that gas.
Yeah, so you want to avoid the gray hair. I just went bald. I think bald might be better than the gray. Would you rather be bald or full hair like you have and all gray?
No. You always opt for the gray hair. I will never.
No, come on.
No, stop it. There's not a bald guy in America that would rather be bald than have gray hair. I don't care how early you go gray. Now, my dad has kept all of his hair. Mostly, he's kept all of his hair, but he didn't go gray. See, this is what I was talking about on the air. He didn't go gray until at least his mid-40s, because I remember, and I'm like 10 years before that. So I think it's working with you two bozos.
Oh, come on.
That's giving me the gray hair. And I will say this, talking about being tired, I don't even know if it's good content for the podcast, but whatever, you're the host.
Yeah, we're going to go off the wall this week. How about that? We'll hit on the sports take in a sec.
Well, remember when you were talking about how you felt ugly a couple weeks ago?
Yes, absolutely. How could you forget?
So, one of the things that I've noticed about being on a normal schedule is that I don't have bags under my eyes. And that I became very self-conscious of, like, when you're up all night, no matter how much sleep you get, you always have bags under your eyes, no matter what. Because
it's not a natural progression on the face.
Well, it might be, and I always was kind of self-conscious about it in pictures too. Like, oh God, do I have big bags on my eyes? I don't want to put that on Facebook, or I don't want that on YouTube.
Wow, I never knew you thought about that when you're taking pictures here for the show.
Only because of the bags. They're impossible to get. Well, I'll tell you what. It's not necessarily about the pictures of the show, but anytime I do TV, I have the makeup person. And so the makeup person, this is why you become self-conscious, because they're always working on the things where you have blemishes. Or they're always working on the things that you need to.
So are you saying the makeup person spends a little more time on your face?
I think, I don't know because I haven't compared it or contrasted, but I always feel like they're spending more time under my eyes. And why wouldn't they? I don't sleep. So now I'm going to be back to feeling like I'm not Frankenstein when I do TV or when we take pictures or whatever, because there's no overnight. But this is a bit of a sad swan song with the overnights, because I'm off this week. The next week I'm doing a pair of overnights, and then the following week is New Year's week. You're going to be gone, and
right.
I'm going to be hosting the overnights all alone for 4 straight nights, and it's going to be like the 4-night finale. It's going to be like, I don't know, like the final episode of a television series, because everybody knows that it's coming. It's going to be very odd.
Well, it's also going to be very much like one of these like series that have been long running, where almost like we're all in like this apartment where Kenny's already moved out. I'm basically moving out, almost like the end of Jersey Shore, and you're left staring in the camera at the end, saying goodbye to everybody. And we're like, wait, why don't we all walk out together?
I'd like to think that our run tops whatever the Jersey Shore accomplished in terms of longevity and integrity. But
hey, there's nothing more integral than Jersey Shore.
There's something very sitcom-y about the show, and especially the way that it happened overnight. And so, it's going to be odd that I'm going to be the last man standing, and I'm going to be doing the last night of the overnight on New Year's Eve. So how kind of bizarre is that, where the final night of our time on the overnights is me alone on New Year's?
It's unbelievable when you think about it. And you know what? That could end up going down because you'll have a lot of, unfortunately, not fortunately, drunk people are out and about. You could have one of the crazier shows in the 2 years on that last night.
I would imagine it's going to be pretty memorable, because I remember the final night I was on the air in Boston, because the final day that I was on the air in Kansas City, my listeners didn't know, my bosses pulled the plug on the show because they didn't want to fare well, because it was very contentious at the end of our negotiations and whatnot. And for those that don't know, the story was just that my contract had come up, and he told me they were going to renew me, and then they just didn't end up doing it. And so they kind of pulled the rug out from all of us, my staff, myself. And so they said, okay, well, you're not coming back. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's your decision. But I'd like to at least have a final show so I can thank the listeners, because I was on the air for nearly 5 years in Kansas City.
Right.
They said, yeah, no problem. Yeah, well, in 2 weeks, you'll have the final show. And then after the first week, that Friday they called me and they said, no more shows. I said, what do you mean? They said, today was your final show. So when I signed off the air,
Wow.
I had no idea it was my final show, and the listeners didn't either. I just thought that was the scummiest way to end a radio show, and it said a lot about my bosses in Kansas City, of which I don't have much respect.
Look out.
Yeah, no, I just thought that, because you know what? It had nothing to do with me, because, my contract was up, and I
Right.
knew that I was going to come to an end.
Well, it's to the listeners.
I hate asking listeners to invest in a show and then not give them the respect that they deserve of telling them, oh, the show's not going to be around anymore. Even if it's a one-day heads up.
Right.
Give them the respect of that.
And it's some kind of closure. It's almost as if when you watch your favorite television show, let's say, and it ends up being, a dog of a series, but you're into it, and then all of a sudden they just cancel the show, and you got invested for 3 seasons or whatever it was, and you had no real conclusion. The storyline never wrapped up.
Yeah, and it's as though, like, you never read about it in a trade magazine or online, or never saw a news article about it, or it was never in the newspaper. Could you imagine if you had invested yourself into a TV show for 5 years, and in the middle of season 5, it wasn't like there was a last episode and the lead actor died or moved on or
Right.
got a new job or whatever. They just stopped airing the show. I just thought that was the most disrespectful thing you could do to listeners.
Exactly.
And,
to a listener base that, by the way, is supposed to be sticking with you, and what kind of respect does that show them?
Yeah, exactly, because the station remained, and there was so much hate mail that came in from our listeners because of how they handled it. My management handled it. It's not something that I ever talked about on the air, but they approached me after that about returning after the show that took over for me totally imploded. And
Oh, wow.
I said I couldn't work for them anymore. I could not work for a company or bosses that didn't treat the listeners with respect, because, on our side of things, it's easy for bosses not to care about the listeners because they never deal with them.
Of course.
But it's hard for us not to, because that's exactly who our audience is every single day. It's who we talk to every day. And you, more than most, you're interacting personally with these people every single day on the phone.
It's unbelievable. The last couple nights, or this week on the show while you've been on vacation, I'm fielding phone calls, left and right with people basically not sure if you're ever coming back now because you're off for this week, and basically people, telling me thank you. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's something that you can't replicate to bosses. They don't get it because they're
Right.
not on the phone every day with Joe from Cleveland or Tim from Philadelphia.
Right. They're not, quote unquote, in the trenches, if you will.
Yeah, and personally, like, talking to these people, and they just, I don't know, I've always lived by the code of you treat people the way that you want to be treated, and I just hate when radio or TV or media execs have no idea who the audience is. So that's why this change is thrilling for us. I mean, it's a promotion, and I can't believe they're actually giving us more responsibility on the show, and I have no idea
what they saw in us.
Exactly. I mean, we really swindled them. But it's tough also because all the people that, have listened to us and are going to stay at the overnights, I keep saying, hey, the podcast will be there. You can listen to Amy, but you can listen to our podcast. We'll have stuff on YouTube. I mean, there's going to be a million ways to listen to us.
Right. Unlike
no
10
matter
years
what.
ago, our voices don't necessarily fade away.
Yeah, it's pretty great with technology. But at the same time, I understand where people are coming from, because that's the people that are your friends for 2 years, for 5 days a week, and you feel like you know them and they know you. And we really have a really close-knit show with our listeners. And so it's definitely bittersweet, but that's why I would never work for any company ever that didn't make this announcement before so that people could prepare themselves, and for us to be able to say thank you, which I plan to do that final week. I just could not imagine doing this and being like, okay, January 1, so long, everybody. See you tomorrow at a different time slot. Thanks for being here. It's a terrible way to do it.
It's bizarre. Well, I mean, at some point that week, even though I'm off, I'm going to have to join you at some point for a segment just to kind of sign off together, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, you sure you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night, come on in at like 4 a.m.?
Hey, listen, anything's possible. I might be tossing and turning. As long as I don't have a few beverages, I have no problem getting in the car and getting over here. As long as I'm not asked to put together nightlights or book guests, I'm all in. You know?
Yeah. Well, we'll try to avoid that responsibility.
Yeah. I'm trying to. Go on.
New Year's Eve, you're going to be absolute toast, and I'm going to be on the air hosting a radio show. It's going to be pretty great.
Exactly. Basically, as we've made jokes before, old Municipal Stadium in Cleveland, the seats getting torn out of the Mothership on the way out, and we're just basically ducking for cover as we head into the new year.
I know. I do want to reiterate, though, that I'm getting a lot of Twitter messages and Facebook messages and calls and texts, and it's very humbling for our listeners to care so much about the show. It really makes me feel good. But a lot of them are worried, oh, my gosh, I can't listen to you guys anymore.
Right.
This is awful and whatnot. And I have to keep reminding everybody that we live in a different world now, which is pretty awesome. You can consume the media that you want to consume at any given point in time, anytime you want. I mean, we'll have full shows via podcast on iTunes and on SoundCloud and on the website, CBS Sports Radio. We'll have stuff on YouTube. We'll have this weekly podcast continuing with the original content on YouTube and the same platforms I just mentioned. You've got the live stream on your phone. You've got your desktop live stream. I mean, plus, not to mention 200 radio affiliates. So it's just like you're not bound anymore by the old, if it's not on my radio, I can't listen to it.
Right. That's a good way to stress it. So, well, we'll be here. Listeners out there on the Permission Granted podcast, Mothership listeners, we will still be here. We may lose the different hours and change hours, but the voices live on forever to go Sandlot style on you.
Yeah, and this is an interesting podcast because I hear that you're actually going to interview one of the new members of the DA show.
Right, which I think was a must. When you had given me the keys to this, I said, I could do something entertainment-wise. I could really take advantage of doing an interview, but why would I go the extra mile and do that when when we have some kind of solution here as to the great old debate, who is going to replace Kenny Brock? And now we kind of, as all these shifts and changes are happening with CBS Sports Radio, have an idea of who will be taking over the wheels of steel. And that person, who I will not name, will step in and make a little podcast debut here. And we'll talk about things such as, can he make a college football pick? And basically, are we second fiddle to them? So we'll see if they really wanted this job. And if they're Mothership worthy, they're going to put them under the heat lamp. We're going to have some fun in part 2 here as you basically go to sleep, wake up at 6 in the morning, have a croissant, and go out fishing.
Well, that sounds like a good plan to me. And I also will say that it's pretty funny because I keep getting this, the show's not going to be the same because you won't have all these strong callers. It's not going to be as wacky. And I understand the sentiment there because a lot of people that have listened to the show since 2000 since we started at CBS Sports Radio 2 years ago, January 2013, never got to hear my show in Boston or Kansas City or Miami. And I can just reassure everybody, it's always been really weird. It's always I've always seemed to attract, just something about me, attract a lot of drunkards or people that are kind of like half in the bag in other ways or weirdos. So I wouldn't worry that the weirdness is going to be there. I think what I've learned is that weird attracts weird, and I just must be the weirdest guy going. So fear not, because it's going to remain pretty weird.
Well, I'm all in. As long as me and you are here, I think we can keep it as weird as we want, right?
Yeah, because let's face it, we're a unique pair anyway. I was just thinking, Mraz, I was down here on vacation in Florida, and I'm out at the beach or I'm fishing or doing whatever, and I'm like, well, this would be a good picture, like fishing on the boat to put on Instagram or on Facebook, or this would be cool. And I'm going, well, it's kind of inappropriate if I have my shirt off.
No, it's never inappropriate to have your shirt off.
Well, I thought about you because I said, I don't know if does anybody want to see my shirt off? I'm like, I don't know. That just seems kind of like, I don't know. Is that creepy? Is that weird? Do listeners, are they going to be like, oh, God, stop, DA, put a shirt on? But I thought, boy, Mraz never has this problem because he feels good being shirtless at all times.
Well, you have to be. Well, plus I have a little more muscle definition. I'm more torn up than you. I got a little better six-pack, the whole deal. So, of course, I'm not self-conscious. You're a scrawny nothing, so I understand.
It's pretty amazing when with all the roles that you have, your roles have roles. You're like, I don't care. I'll be in the middle of a Vegas pool with a crown on my head, and we can take a picture of that and put it on Facebook.
And I'm the first one the ladies come flocking to. They love a little Big Vanilla. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't know what you mean. I've never seen any lady besides your wife flock to you. But Danielle's a beautiful woman, so who am I to say?
Exactly. Come on now. Well, anyway, I guess I'll let you get to sleep. Enjoy the rest of your trip, and I'll continue on with Part B of the Permission Granted podcast with lots more fun to come with the new board op, or Wheels of Steel man, if you will, on the DA show to come here.
All right, good luck, Mraz. I'm looking forward to listening to this bad boy when it's all said and done.
All right, welcome into Side B of the Permission Granted podcast, the producer's side, where we always like to have a little fun with the former man on the Wheels of Steel, Kenny Brock. Kenny, as always, welcome. How are you?
A little disappointed you deleted our first 10 minutes of this podcast because that was where the good stuff lies, but apparently that's not suitable for whatever kind of content you're looking to put out.
No, the good stuff was there, and unfortunately, it will be buried in the archives forever, as I've already hit delete. Joining us, though, Kenny, if you remember 2 weeks ago, we had Jay Berman in here, and it was like a romper room. It
was a disaster.
Everything got derailed. Well, we're going to be joined by James Ward, who, if you listen to CBS Sports Radio, you hear him on the weekends, produces the Ion College football shows, and he's been part of that Mojo show, the time slot that the DA show is taken over. And apparently, James,
endearing.
Very endearing. Yes, James apparently, as all these shakings and movements are coming around, we find out will be a member of the Mothership of the DA show starting the beginning of January, filling your shoes, Kenny. How do you feel about that?
I'm all right with it, but I feel bad for James because, I mean, we all know that he probably should have gotten the morning show producer job, but instead he's got to work with your fat ass in DA.
Jeez.
I mean, what a freaking step down that's going to be.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
There's two things I'm going to add to that. Number one, the last couple of weeks since you've left the show and you've done this podcast, you've been very relaxed and very almost like we're like, wow, Kenny's getting a lot of sleep. You have just come in guns hot here, very edgy, and you're already using the fat ass word, and we're 2 minutes into this podcast. Fat ass! Second of all,
you should have heard my other 15 minutes worth of language.
Second of all, you brought up James, who, no reason to hide it, went out and he had interviewed for a morning show job for this new lineup.
Yes.
He did not get the job. James, are we second fiddle to you? Are you using the DA show because you didn't get what you wanted?
I will never use you guys. You guys are my friends. I will never use either of you.
Cookie cutter answer.
Yes, he's using the living bejesus out of you, Mraz.
Gee, so are you happy to be with the show?
Of course. I'm ecstatic to be a member of the Mothership.
Oh, boy. This is. Do you talk about basically dumpster diving in the free agent market when we go get James Ward?
Where'd you get your answers? The Jets cue cards for the media? I mean,
they were provided to me before the podcast. I have 5 taglines that I'll be using constantly.
Okay, well, we need to iron out some things here if James is going to be joining the show and doing the job that you once did, Kenny. Now, there's been almost like a trade barter agreement off the air, as we let these listeners know, that you, Kenny, had basically made
Why don't you just take a back seat here?
Okay.
All right, so this is what happened.
All right.
James texted me, because you can't tell the story, you weren't there, you weren't involved.
Boy,
James texted me the other
Kenny.
Well, yeah, I mean, you keep me up till God knows what hour. I got to be at work tomorrow.
I had to tape with DA first. He had to go to sleep to wake up early for Continental Breakfast.
He's on vacation in the freaking Keys. He can chill out for a little bit, all right? He can wait to go have his little bloody and his mimosas and his freaking margaritas till midnight. He doesn't have to be there at 9 o'clock.
Sounds like you wish you were in the Keys.
No, I don't, actually. I'm enjoying my my time here in New York City in the freaking terrible weather. Anyways, James texted me the other day, since he was going to be working with DA, if he could take over Brock's locks, if I gave him my blessing. And obviously, James and I have had many conversations about degenerate gambling and college football over the past couple of years that we've gotten to know each other.
Right.
So I feel like they are in safe hands. So, James, I will gladly pass on Brock's locks into Ward's winners or Ward's whatever you want to hit the tagline with.
I think we got to go with Ward's winners. I think that's a good tagline.
I think that's terrible. It's cheesy.
Up the gut? What about up the gut? Up the gut's not cheesy?
No, up the gut was cool. It was hip. It meant something. I didn't make a play on my name. It meant I was fat. I had a gut. Up the gut is a signature run. Come on, man. That made sense. Brock's locks. It rhymed. It was easy. Ward's winners. It basically sounds like you're at the ski bowl at Chuck E. Cheese and you're
getting
collecting
tons of tickets, tons of winners.
Come on.
Exactly. He'll be paying out every week. Why? What do you suggest there, fat boy?
First of all, it's chubby, husky, chunky. Don't call me fat boy. Fat ass! Or I'll lower
Kenny,
your pot.
you missed it early on. He said Big Vanilla. He referred to himself as Big Vanilla.
I did.
Oh, is that right?
Well, when my shirt comes off and the girls come flocking to me at a pool, they like me. I'm a little Big Vanilla.
Yeah, because they think you're a big freaking stuffed animal that they can float on while they drink their little, girly drinks in the freaking pool.
They don't think I'm a float. And by the way, what stuffed animal floats in a pool? That would just sound very wet and messy.
No, I mean, whatchamacallit, the stuffed swan that Johnny Manziel was partying with in Vegas a couple months ago.
Now, Kenny, you know I don't like to give Sean credit for anything.
Right.
But he is right. The few times I was at a pool with him, he was one of the first guys that the women flocked to.
There's no doubt.
Well, you want to know the reasoning? He's non-threatening. You know why? Because he's fat. Fat ass! I'm not surprised, but it's not like he's out there and he's going to take one of these broads back to the hotel room, even if he wasn't married. And you know that they can smell the ring from a mile away. You know what I mean?
Please. I'm out there. Girls like, there's a lot of chubby chasers out there. Let's be honest.
Yeah, if you were chubby, that'd be one thing, but you're not. You're just straight fat.
Come on. By the way, I think I need to play the Ding Chubbo if I go and edit this podcast with how many times you said the word fat. Did you have an encounter with a fat guy in New York City today that you just had it and you're freaking out?
No.
Oh, my God. I saw you last Friday night where, good times, everything. You come out and you just slinging arrows at me.
First of all, I saw you Saturday night, not Friday.
Oh, well, I forgot. Well, can we get back on track here, back to James? Ward's winners can't stick. He's got to come up with something better.
Well, I mean, I don't know what else you can come up with besides Ward's winners that will indicate what kind of cash the listeners will be winning off of J-Dub.
How about James Pays?
What?
James Pays. It rhymes.
Shut up. That's stupid. No, it doesn't.
I don't hate that, but the idea of introducing it as James Pays is very awkward.
Yeah, well,
I think Ward's winners sounds good.
Yeah, and also James pays. Also, you can infer that he pays his bookie, which is not what you want.
Oh, good point. Yeah, because you don't want any lawsuits or anything coming back on that.
Well, not any lawsuits.
And if I'm paying out, I'm not winning. You don't want guys to trust my picks.
Well, right, exactly.
Here's the other thing too. Kenny, obviously you've watched a lot of college football. Does James even have the credentials to be picking college football games? I mean, where do you get off? Are you just doing it because you figure you're sitting in Kenny's chair, you could just pick college football games?
I watch a lot of college football.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of Saturdays texting college football picks with Kenny.
Is that right?
All freaking day on Saturday. If there's two degenerates that text me every Saturday. James is one.
Who you like at noon?
Exactly. Oh, I got East Carolina lane 7.5. I got Southern Miss getting 14. I'm like, who the hell are they even freaking playing?
And if we can go back a little bit, Ohio State plus 4.5. Wisconsin,
lock of the century.
Big Ten championship game, lock of the century.
I bet Wisconsin.
Sprinkle the money line. You're not losing that. I watched Wisconsin play maybe 10 games this year.
Melvin Gordon.
They have one good player.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon didn't break 100 yards rushing in that game there, pal. So,
well, listen, I lost money on that game, and I'm not going to hide from it.
What did I tell you? I said take the 4 with Ohio State. Would they win 59-0? So you were plus 63. That's easy money. And James, were they on the money line? Plus 200?
I think it was plus 180 or plus 160.
Straight cash, homie.
All right. Well, I guess the question now has been answered. Can James pick games? Because apparently he has the degenerate look in that the listeners will like. And I guess from the situation, the new listenership in this time slot is familiar with James, and maybe they'll get a little more edgy James on this show. You know what I mean? James, can you be as cranky as Kenny? Because that's something that really brought out color in this show.
I did spend a year in Philly.
Yeah,
I didn't spend most of my life in Philly, but I spent a year in Philly.
Close enough.
I don't know about
It's the Philly crank that the listeners are accustomed to.
Kenny can't shake it, man. And that really is that was an element of the show that, quite frankly, as good a job as these other board-ups have done, is missing from the DA show since Kenny left. So I don't know. Not necessarily looking to replace Kenny, but we need something out of you here.
You need a little bit of negative attitude.
Yeah, now don't force the negative attitude. If you're not naturally negative, then don't force the issue. But, what are you bringing to the table here? The listeners need to know. Boy, well, he has to think about it. There we go. This is a failed experiment.
I could give you a little bit of negative attitude. I'm usually a sunny side kind of guy.
All right. Well, maybe I've become cranky over the past couple of weeks, so maybe it'll be.
That's what I've been told there. Yeah, fat boy. That's what I've been told.
Again, another fat reference. Fat ass! Jeez.
A cranky SOB since I've left. DA, reiterated to me at dinner the other night, multiple times that you just become, the curmudgeon on the show. You hate everybody. I don't know what happened. You were, happy-go-lucky, want-to-be Santa guy, and now all of a sudden you're Mr. I want to kill everybody. What's going on there?
It's the holiday spirit.
I think that might be. You know what else is? Let's be honest, and James is going to have to deal with this too. You know what? You pick up a lot of slack. You do a lot of work, Kenny, and I'm basically doing your job in the meantime, a job that James is now going to have to do, whether it be podcasting or anything else.
Whoa.
Here we go.
30-second timeout. You ain't podcasting. I know from a fact from sources inside the studios that I still have that you're waddling out of there at 6:05 because you're throwing up Billy Jacques alone.
No. I'm still podcasting on Sunday nights.
Billy.
Billy hasn't been in there.
You got to stay after him podcast.
That's his
I got
hours
an
on the
appointment
schedule.
with my bed at 7:15.
Right. And you're taking advantage of a happy-go-lucky kid who's going to turn into a miserable SOB.
Billy, I'll put in a good word with management if you podcast for me.
So speaking of all the movings and shakings with this mothership, with James coming with and everything, it looks like the one member that's going to be left behind, kind of like you get him with the apartment, is old Schwartzy. Love Schwartz. Yeah. 2 years with Schwartz. He's giving us some laughs, giving us some head scratchers. He's staying behind and will stay with Amy in that time slot. I've been working this week with Amy and Schwartz. I got to be honest with you. He is kissing a lot of ass. I feel like
he knows.
He wants to make sure that he's taken care of after we all leave, and he gets his on-air banter. He gets to make his World Cup goal calls or whatever else he's going to do. He's really pushing hard to basically let Amy know that he could be basically a revived career and somebody off the bench that could give her a few minutes.
He's going to be that guy who was sitting at the end of the bench for the last 2 seasons. Or, you know who he is? He's like a Jimmy Clausen. He hasn't started a game in 4 years, but we're going to give him the start on Sunday, even though he's 1-9 in his career starts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's definitely working on that. Now, speaking of Jimmy Clausen, let's actually talk a little sports here. Enough with this funny. There are sports fans that listen to this. Is Jay Cutler done in Chicago, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, now here's, I kind of feel opinionated on this. If you were a team a la the Bills, a la the Jets, let's say you're not in those top 2 picks where the Bucks and Titans currently sit, where they could draft Mariota or Winston, would you go get a Jay Cutler or would you avoid him at all costs?
I think if you bring Jay Cutler into a team with a good defense, you can win 10 games with Jay Cutler.
You can, because he has won 10 games.
Look at Andy Dalton. Look at Alex Smith. Jay Cutler's a better quarterback than both of those guys.
No, Andy Dalton's a better quarterback than Jay Cutler.
No way.
No, Dalton is not a better quarterback than Cutler. I would take Cutler over Mariota or any of those other guys if I was like a team like the Bills that isn't that far off, or you know what, a team that should go get him. A team like the Houston Texans, who are in dire need of a quarterback.
That's an interesting team.
Play wide receivers. They have a good defense. They just need that quarterback. And now he's got those couple big, targets on there on the outside, and he's got the tight end and the running back game. And I would take Cutler, no doubt.
See, to me, I don't think here's what it all comes down to. A team like the Bills, a team like the Texans is desperate to make the playoffs. Yes. So does Jay Cutler maybe help them win 10 games like James said because he has? Sure. But ultimately, you're not going to win a Super Bowl with Jay Cutler. So why even set your franchise back another 3 years by investing that time into Cutler? Go either here, because here's the problem. You're going to be just good enough not to be drafting where you're going to be getting an elite quarterback the next year, and you're not going to win a Super Bowl anyway. Figure out who's playing quarterback, more or less tank without telling your players you're tanking and get the next best quarterback that comes out the next year. That's what I would do. Why waste your time getting a guy like Cutler?
I think we all would agree that Cutler and RG3 are both probably going to be on different teams next year.
Right.
Yeah.
Which one of them has a better chance to make the playoffs next year?
Cutler.
You know what?
I don't think RG3 is a starting quarterback in this league.
You know what? I'm going to say RG3.
You're an idiot.
Because I think Washington, much like, I'll give you a comparison, and this is going to be the old New York comparison. I think that what's happened to RG3 in Washington is a lot like what happened to like Jabba Chamberlain in New York with the Yankees, where kind of management has just misused them, not done the right thing, rushed back from injuries left and right. Where I think if you get him in the right situation with the right quarterback guru as a coach, not Jay Gruden, I think RG3 won't be an elite quarterback, but I think he could be a middle of the pack starting quarterback in the league.
You know what the most
and I think that
term now
is what?
The most overused term in football now is QB guru. George Whitfield, Jay Gruden, all these guys are supposed to be QB gurus, QB whisperers.
Yeah, Mark Trestman was supposed to be the same thing.
Shut the F up. These guys are supposed to be top-tier NFL quarterbacks. Freaking RG3 was picked, second in the draft?
Yeah,
and the Redskins
traded on
traded away the farm for him, and they gave him a boatload of money. Like, you know what? This is the fault of all these stupid-ass GMs and owners who just want to make a splash instead of building properly through the draft. Like, what the hell is drafting Mariota and one going to do for the, whoever, the New York Jets? They're still going to be a god-awful team with no running game, no wide receivers. That defense is not what it used to be. Rex Ryan's probably going to be gone, and that offensive line ain't all that great. But yet in 3 years, when the Jets still suck, they're going to blame it on drafting Mariota. It's not the kids' fault. It's these dumbass GMs and owners and scouts who don't realize how to actually build a legitimate and respectable team.
Well, I mean, but the problem is the right way to build a team, in my mind, is hitting on the quarterback, because look at the Colts. They hit on the quarterback. They had all these problems, and now they're fine.
They were already – the pieces were there.
They were terrible with Dan Orlovsky the year before.
Right, but they have one bad year, get the number one pick, and they're set up for the next 12 years.
All right, well, here's the problem. If you do a thing, because another guy who's going to be available is Brian Hoyer is going to be available. So you're going to have the market of
You
these.
don't want Hoyer either.
But here's the problem. So you're going to have a market of these guys in the offseason. Let me ask you something. Other than the Arizona Cardinals hitting on Warner and Palmer, how many times do these retread quarterbacks really work?
Gary Collins.
Okay. Kerry Collins worked.
Steve Young was a retread. He had a couple bad seasons with the Bucks.
Yeah, but
went
Cutler,
to San Francisco.
And all right, you know what?
Brett Favre?
No, the ultimate. I don't really consider those guys retread quarterbacks because they were still young. Cutler. Well, I guess RG3 would be that.
Yeah, that would exactly be RG3.
Cutler is.
You're arguing against yourself, Mraz, by the way.
Well, what I'm going to tell you is where I'm wrong is Drew Brees. I think is the perfect example of that.
Yeah, but he was good with San Diego. They just knew that they
knew what, that they couldn't win a Super Bowl, and the Saints went and did.
Yeah, Drew Brees isn't a bad comparison.
Point is, I don't think Cutler is any of those guys, and it's not like he's a spring chicken anyway. And by the way, I mean, how many more weapons on offense does he need to get the job done? Too?
Right. Well, that's fair, because Alshon and Marshall and Forte,
Bennett,
you're not going to get a better, quadruplet group of guys together than those four.
Right. Coming into the season, you could argue that the Bears had the best skill positions in the league. The best wide receiver tandem, a very good tight end, and a great running back.
Okay. All right. Now, you two, Mr. College Football Gurus, I'll throw this at you. It seems very obvious at the moment that the top two quarterbacks off the board are going to be Mariota and Winston. Are there anybody else, a la Hundley, a la Bryce Petty, that would be worth taking over one of these retread guys if you're a middle-of-the-pack team? I
don't like Hundley at all. I think Hundley is very overrated.
Agreed, 1,000%. He sucks.
Well, who's going to be the next quarterback off the board?
Probably Bryce Petty.
Yeah, probably Bryce Petty. Connor Cook said he's coming back for a senior year at Michigan State. He was another guy that was a potential first-rounder.
Hackenberg's still, a year away?
Hackenberg is going back to school.
Year. But Hackenberg regressed seriously this year.
Hackenberg was bad. He was bad this year.
He was really bad. I think at one point he had more interceptions than touchdowns thrown. But you have to factor in that they lost 4 offensive linemen. They didn't have the wide receivers that they did the year previous. So,
well, all right. So let's say those come flying off the board. Would a team like the Jets probably wouldn't do it at 6? They'd probably go after like an Amari Cooper. But would a Jets or Bills are a good example because they're going to end up with a good record in draft late. Would they be better served drafting, let's say, Bryce Petty later on or getting Jay Cutler?
But then that means they're giving up on E.J. Manuel. 2 years removed from a first-round pick.
Listen, I think you gave up on him the moment you went to Orton this year.
No, I don't think so because they threw him into the mix. Sometimes, you know what? People forget that these kids, they're 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and not all of them are mature enough right away to take over an NFL franchise and everything that entails.
Right.
Sometimes they need to grow and mature a little bit. You know what I mean? He wasn't given that. EJ wasn't given that much responsibility at Florida State. He was, athletic and he could throw the ball a little bit, and he had big wide receivers. It's a totally different and more sophisticated game in the NFL.
So you think he comes to camp next year with a nice chance to win the Bills' starting job?
I think so, yes.
I would agree with that. If you look at Florida State, their last 3 starting quarterbacks, 2 of them were first-round picks, and the third is going to be a first-round pick in Manuel, Ponder, and now Jameis.
Well, it's not exactly a great track record for Jameis.
Doesn't look good for Jameis out of those 2 guys.
And I know for some reason Kenny's very down on Mariota. I guess because he's a system quarterback. You think Winston is the better quarterback, Kenny?
No. It's tough because you know what? Winston has a very Tim Tebow-esque delivery. And his delivery is so slow and so deliberate.
Kind of like Byron Leftwich.
I would probably say that Jameis is a touch better. I don't think that Mariota is going to translate. Like you said, I think that he's a system quarterback. he's going to get smacked around a couple times. If you remember, RG3 was doing exactly what Mariota was doing at Oregon when he was at Baylor.
Right.
Just blowing by people, the track speed, the big arm. Now what are we doing? We're looking at, 2 more knee surgeries from RG3 because he's getting smacked around. And Mariota's slighter of build than RG3 is. So I just think Mariota is an unmitigated disaster waiting to happen.
Well, if you look at Oregon last year, once Mariota had that hurt knee, they fell completely off the cliff. The reason why Oregon was so successful this year was Mariota was able to stay healthy.
Right. Well, and again, so I'll give you this, and I was on WIP last week and had this very same argument about Mariota with our boy Adam Regner, James. And, track record, you want to talk about track record coming out of Florida State? Look at the track record of quarterbacks coming out of Oregon, out of that system. Dennis Dixon. Where's he now? Nowhere. Where's Jeremiah Masoli? Nowhere. Where's Darren Thomas, who was a Heisman favorite as a redshirt sophomore? Nowhere. He's up in the Canadian Football League, and I think he just got cut recently. So you want to talk about quarterbacks
following the
CFL? Out in the NFL? What's that?
Said you following the CFL. Good for you.
No, I just know that he was up there because he came out early and he didn't get drafted, so he had to resort to going to the CFL instead of going back to college and getting bigger and stronger and faster for a year. So no, you want to talk about track record? Oregon quarterbacks suck. Joey Harrington, if you want to go back that far. So I still hold grudges over those kind of quarterbacks and picks.
Would you lose your mind if Chip Kelly traded up and made sure that he got Mariota because the Eagles might need a quarterback?
I would never, ever support the Eagles in anything ever again.
Can we quote that and rack that? You would never support the Eagles if they go crazy in May and trade up to go draft Mariota?
Nope, never again. I will disown the Philadelphia Eagles franchise as a whole.
But and you got to think about it this way. There's still so much football left. This time last year, Teddy Bridgewater was the number 1 pick.
Sure.
2 years ago, Geno Smith was the number 1 pick. Think of how far both of those guys fell.
Well, all you need, like we mentioned, is Bryce Petty in his bowl game to put up great numbers in front of more NFL savvy fans watching, and not necessarily the hardcore college football fan. For everybody to go to berserk on him and skyrocket his
right.
rating.
Have a good combine, have a good pro day. Next thing you know, your top 5 pick. Look at Blake Bortles.
Oh, well, just hold on. James, I'm so glad you brought up Blake Bortles because that was my next guy that I was going to bring up. Mraz, I seem to remember a couple podcasts ago, maybe like the first 1 or 2,
right?
You saying that you would take Blake Bortles long-term over my pick of Teddy Bridgewater. How are you feeling about that right now there, bud?
Well, I'll tell you 2 things. I'm going to lower your pot so you don't yell down my throat. Number 1, I was wrong on Bridgewater. I think he's looked very good. However, that Zimmer defense and the special teams have helped him cushion the blow. And I actually think Adrian Peterson being around there and Bridgewater getting his own name in that huddle has helped him as well. That being said, I'm not ready to bail on Blake Bortles. That team is god-awful. I think Blake Bortles still has a good career in this league.
So Kenny takes Teddy. Sean takes Bortles, and I will take Derek Carr as the rookie quarterback that has had the best season so far.
Well, I think Derek Carr has had the best season.
Yeah, I think he has the best potential
as well.
He was the guy that everyone talked about that needed more time to season and more time to sit on the bench. Started right away and has been, I'm not going to say he's had a good year. The Raiders are terrible, but does he have anyone around him?
No, but he far exceeded expectations that people had. I didn't think that he was going to translate to the NFL. I'll be the first one to admit that I was dead wrong on that. I think he looked phenomenal in his, considering everything that he has and doesn't have around him,
For once, the Raiders, who have failed at drafts miserably, did a great job here because they got Khalil Mack early and then didn't have to take their quarterback till the second round in Derek Carr.
Right. Oh, I forgot about Khalil Mack.
He's probably favored for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Wow. Coming out of freaking Buffalo of all places.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So the Raiders really hit a home run there. So that's it. So that just goes to show you again. See, we're talking about these quarterbacks drafting. Those teams did the right thing. And they drafted quarterbacks, which I think is the way to go. I think you got to take a chance on a younger guy than taking a chance on what you know you have. And one of these garbage guys.
They didn't reach. Like you're saying, you're praising the Raiders. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You're saying the Raiders did the right thing. They did it through the draft. Okay, that's fine doing it for the draft, but you don't want to reach for somebody like Minnesota did a couple years ago when they traded up to get Christian Ponder.
Well, I don't think so. So why can't you take a quarterback in the second or third round then?
That's fine, but what you're saying is, you need to draft them early and not, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Why don't you get your story straight, all right?
I got my story straight. You're not listening. As usual.
Yeah, all right. No, I'm clipping my toenails, which you need to know.
Oh, that's disgusting. You're clipping your toenails while you have a conversation with us?
Now, are you clipping them into the toilet, into the tub, into a pile? You're going to clean it up later?
That's a good,
Into the
that's a good
trash
question.
can.
Into a trash can.
So you're like dangling your foot over the trash can and clipping your toenails?
I'm sitting on the edge of the bed.
Oh, you cut your toenails on your bed?
Oh, man.
No,
you got ricochet waiting to happen there.
No, there's no ricochet.
You're going to fall asleep and wake up with a toenail in your mouth.
I have excellent control of toenail trajectory. I know exactly where it's going each time I clip.
Oh, that is so gross, dude. That is so gross. Well, on that note, I think we can get ready to get wrapped up here and actually send James home for the night. Thank you. Thank you, Kenny, for ruining a good time.
It's all fun and games until Kenny brings up his toenails.
Ugh, gross. All right, well, Kenny, do you want to tag us out here with the subscriptions? You like doing that every week?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, you can subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, on iTunes, and check us out on YouTube at The DA Show. This is the Permission Granted podcast. Kenny, did I do it?
Are you a dumbass?
See,
honestly?
I did it wrong again. I did it wrong again.
Are you a dumbass?
Okay. Let's...
YouTube.com/The DA Show. Can you say it with me?
YouTube.com/The DA Show.
Facebook.com/The
DA Show.
There you go.
Yes, and you could follow me on Twitter at Sean Morash CBS. You can follow Kenny Brock at KBrockJR. Kenny, by the way, congratulations, over 1,000 followers. Got to tip my cap to you. It was a long road. I'm happy you got there. Me and James will unfollow you.
Well, there you go. And, I won't follow you too, and actually never follow back because, Mraz, you literally bring nothing to the Twitterverse.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. James, a little Twitter plug for yourself.
At James Ward on...
Guy doesn't even know his Twitter.
What's my Twitter handle?
Guy doesn't
J Ward CBS, isn't it?
James Ward CBS.
James Ward CBS. So
maybe that's why I have no followers.
Boy. Boy, oh boy. James. Well, all right. Well,
I've never heard anyone stumble over plugging their own Twitter.
That is unbelievable. Well, we have a lot to look forward to in the new year with James on the Reels This Deal. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Take care. Adios.